Hey fans, I hope you're all enjoying the program tonight.
You will be a weapon. You will be a minister of death, praying for war.
You're not inside, you are outside, okay?
Sir, I heard it was the best, sir.
It is the best.
The only problem you're gonna have is that you didn't buy more.
All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the Weekly Sitrep. Kyle, how was your weekend? Did you win your prop bets?
No, I didn't. I'm a terrible better. Sucks. But no, it was good. Wife had her 40th birthday party, which me and a friend had been planning. Executed that pretty well. Had like a bunch of our friends here in Austin come, and it was really cool.
That sounds great. 40. Will she be mad? Will she be mad you said that number on the pod?
No, I think she's come to terms with it.
It's good.
So.
Well, you guys are both aging gracefully. So
yeah, it happens quicker than you think. You know, one minute you're 30 years old in your MBA program, and the next, you know, you're hitting 40s. And
yeah, man, that was me last year. So it is a very strange feeling to enter the 30s and realize kind of your youth is over. It's you know, your 20s, for anyone listening that's still in their 20s, is kind of the professional period where you're like kind of allowed to explore, make mistakes, figure out what you're doing without a lot of consequence. I feel like people afford a lot of leeway to 20-year-olds. Cross that threshold.
You can still mess it up pretty hard in your 30s too and bounce back. So
I mean, there's plenty of comeback stories, but it does feel weird. So anyway, congrats to you guys making it to 40 with three beautiful kids.
Yeah.
So this week we have some interesting stories with a new guest. Sonny is unable to come on this week. Not sure if I should tell people that this early on so they stop listening, because I know he's everyone's favorite portion, but he will be back next week. He has an investor meeting tonight. So good luck to Sonny, and congratulations to Actuate on all their success. But we do have another guest. Gedalia Gillis will be coming on to discuss the coming Israeli offensive in Rafah. We're also going to be talking about Venezuela's military adventurism in Guyana, and some interesting stuff that I think we learned about Guyana this week. Third, we're going to talk about the special counsel findings that came out this week for President Biden. And then we're going to discuss the tech giants that are trying to, quote, fix San Francisco. So first, we will welcome on Gedalia to talk a little bit about the pending Israeli action in Rafah. All right, welcome, Gedalia. Thank you so much for coming. Want to just jump right in, have you introduce yourself, give us your background, and tell us a little about what you've been doing recently.
Sure. So yeah, I'm a second year now at Wharton. Before coming to Wharton, I was a company commander in the Special Forces. As you know, when you hear Special Forces, that can mean anything. It's basically, I would say, like that sort of mid-tier Special Forces. So I was in an equivalent of like the Rangers back home. In Israel, everyone enlists. So I went in from the beginning, did my training, then became a platoon commander, then company commander. And I was doing that until 2018, and then I continued in my reserve duty. Once I came to Wharton, I stopped my reserve duty because you're no longer sort of part of the unit, because they can't count on you coming for training. But then October 7th happened, and October 9th or 10th, I was on a plane back home already. I would say that back then, those first few days, it was really not clear what was going to happen. In my mind, it was this sort of like World War II vibe happening, and I was sure that I was going to come back without my official role, but within a few days, so many people are going to be killed that I'm going to find myself like general in some sort of like Saving Private Ryan scene. I mean, that was the mentality. It was so unprecedented, this attack, that I felt like I was just going back to who knows what. Basically, what I did for that month and a half was mainly defensive work. It was a lot of cleaning up in the most sad sense of that word. It was finding bodies, body parts, just sort of figuring it out, trying to prepare the ground for then the Israel's retaliation. And then at some point I came back to Wharton. Things were out in control, were in control, not as crazy as I thought they would be. And I came back to finish up the semester. I did a few exams, last 2 weeks of the semester. And then I went back now for winter break. I rejoined my reserve unit. We were in Gaza. We were in south of Khan Younis, which is southern Gaza, just still north of Rafah, which we might discuss, but basically looking for these tunnels. So I was doing that for a month. Again, I was not in official capacity, just sort of helping out buddies of mine that were with me in my regular service, and their officers in this unit, and they said it would be great to have you around. Yeah, now I'm finishing off the last semester. I'm not planning on going back as if things stand for the way they are right now. Like, I'm not going back for some more service. I'm going to continue finishing out business school. But that's basically a little bit about me and a little bit about the past sort of 5 months.
Yeah. Well, I for one will say, I remember when October 7th happened, and you messaged out asking kind of for supplies and stuff that vets might have, because vets bringing back all their as we say CIF gear.
Yeah.
maybe they could lend you some, because it was all hands on deck. And I just remember thinking like I don't know what would happen if I was going to school, in Israel or Italy or wherever, and someone said like, hey, come back home, because like you said, you laugh about it, but I mean, you laugh about it now, but you talked about how harrowing it was, and how you kind of went over thinking like, is this it, right? Like, is this going to end? So, major props to you. I thought that was pretty outstanding when I saw that. And then obviously I went to your event that you held, and seeing those photos that you showed of what Hamas did to your friends and family members in southern Israel was horrific. I mean, it was one of the more difficult things I've ever seen. Yeah. And now the war stands. The first few days, I think the United States was very, very, they were in solidarity with Israel. There was kind of a feeling of, this is horrific. This was the 9/11, but in greater proportion, and would have been as if 30,000 Americans were killed. Yeah. And things have started to shift, and especially now that the war is going into Rafah. Could you tell us a little bit about what is Rafah? Where is the war now, and why does Israel need to continue into Rafah? For anyone that says, hey, ceasefire now, it's time to lay down our weapons, Israel's gone, enough, right. Peace is here. Yeah,
for sure. So I would start by saying, but just so you guys know, like in Israel, I'm considered like fairly left wing. Like I was never a Netanyahu fan. My politics, both on like economics and political. So you're really getting, from me at least, a perspective of someone who's like within Israel considered very much like center. But to your question, what seems like a super right-wing view in the US and Israel is just like basic common sense. When you talk about this conflict, you have an organization like Hamas who did what they did on October 7th. I think that even Israel was surprised that even though it's in their charter and they say that this is what they want to do, they want to massacre all Jews, all Zionists, no one believed that they actually want to do it. I think that's the problem that the Biden administration and Americans in general have right now, is that they don't realize that this like Islamic Jihad thing is for real. They're not kidding about. And I think Israel's approach was, wait, if you give Hamas money, if you make sure like they have them, they have what they need, then everything's going to be okay. And one of the most striking things when I was in Gaza, in south of Khan Younis, I was not in a rich neighborhood, and the houses were nice. Like the worst was like a regular house in India when I was backpacking, like around northern India. So there's a completely false narrative that like the Palestinians are just completely pushed against the wall and they had no choice but to do this. This was a choice. They sacrifice a lot to do it because Hamas believes in this Islamic jihad. And this is what will bring me to your question, which is, it's pretty simple. You have a terrorist organization that's saying, we did 9/11 and we're going to do it again and again and again. And they're in Rafah as well. Like that's where the stronghold is right now. So it's almost a childish answer, but the answer is because that's where Hamas are. They're threatening to do this again. And it's like basic self-defense to go in there. There's really not much more to it. There's a lot of operational complications to make it happen, to do it correctly. But I have to say that I think that even within the Israeli military, people are surprised on how professional and how successful the IDF has been. Casualties seem super high, but they're actually not high when you think about urban warfare and high dense warfare. Like I think the US would have killed way more civilians if they were acting in the same sort of situation. I can tell you about all sorts of stories that I have about how restrictive some of the opening fire laws are within the military, but gonna answer after this long answer. I'm just gonna give you the short answer, which is Hamas are in Rafah. That's their stronghold. They're holding hostages there right now, and they're threatening to redo these attacks again. So it's really no choice. No one really wants to do this. What you have to do.
Yeah, Rafah. I'm saying it wrong. Rafah. It's the furthest south, correct?
Yeah, so basically the way this war has been managed so far has been that Israel started off with like super heavy bombarding of the Air Force, which I think sent like a message that we're serious. And then the Israeli military themselves were helping Palestinians move from all the other sort of areas of Gaza to the most southern border, Rafah, in Hebrew we call it Rafiah. So basically you have a complicated situation because you have 1.7 million Gazans who usually are dispersed throughout the whole Gaza Strip now living in these refugee camps and within the city of Rafiah, of Rafah. So for obvious reasons, it's going to be a very complicated operation to manage to operate there without killing too many civilians. But that's sort of why it has become, this is the last area that the IDF hasn't operated in yet. So to make this happen, they are going to have to find some sort of sophisticated evacuation plan of allowing the civilians to move back into central northern Gaza so that they can take care of the sort of battalions that are there on the southern border. There's another point, which is that it seems like quite a few hostages are being held in that area. So just last night, Israel successfully managed to release 2 hostages that were held in the city itself. And again, this is where sometimes when you want to explain Israel's narrative, it's so childish that people don't believe you. Because I was reading in the New York Times about how Israel killed 40 Palestinians or 50 Palestinians in Rafah last night. But it's like literally the hostages were held by Hamas terrorists in Rafah, and like that's the majority of people that were killed. So obviously there's collateral damage of like 10, 15 out of that 40. But when you tell that narrative, it just sounds so stupid. Sometimes the answers, the sort of pro-Israel answers, are so simple that it sounds like it must be some sort of propaganda. But that's basically what's going on in Rafah.
Wow. It's yeah.
It's like imagine, I think the main thing is like with the US, imagine like there was like some city where like 100 Americans were being held hostage. Would anyone like be even thinking about operate there, not operate there? Like you wouldn't even think twice.
Yeah, I always hear these people talk about I always hear the death toll. I'm always skeptical because it's like the Palestinian Authority. Like, of course, Hamas is telling us that 26,000 civilians have died. I'm sure there's civilians that have died. And the narrative that comes out, obviously war is hell. This was not initiated by Israel. But the narrative that comes out is that Israel indiscriminately bombs Gaza, right? Whether it's Gaza City or Rafah, that when Israel goes in, they bomb hospitals, they bomb schools. Could you tell us more? You talked about the fact that you have very restrictive rules of engagement and ways of containing. Can you talk a little bit about that and kind of just answer those people that will say you do it indiscriminately, right? That it's
Yeah, so I'll start with an anecdote, which is in January when I was in Gaza, we were like basically going through a sort of pre-K first grade type building, and we're destructive. When you go in with fire, you're worried that there's going to be someone there, and since we know that all civilians are evacuated, we go in with force so that none of the soldiers get hurt. And you get in and you see these like small little chairs, and like you see a chalkboard with like ABC, and you're like, oh wow, like sort of feel bad, like this, like this isn't what I'm trying to, is it what's going on here? And then like within an hour or two, we find this tunnel entrance under the swing set of this like pre-K first grade school. Like this stuff is real. Like when you hear these claims that Hamas is just a cynical organization, it's true. It's true. And that's what's so tough about fighting these proxy wars against these proxy militias. Hezbollah up north in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, they don't see themselves as responsible for civilians in any way, right? Unlike in a way, Iran is the weak link of all of this, right? What I would like to see is a more forceful alliance with Iran, because Iran see themselves as the government. They need to care for the civilians. But when you fight against these militias, and I'm sure the US know this from the Taliban, they see themselves as doing God's work by fighting the infidels. They don't see themselves as having responsibility for civilians. And when you're fighting against that type of cynical warfare, it's really hard to then not have to bomb hospitals and schools because they're used as headquarters. Like it's there. I can't tell you the numerous times where I personally have found weapons, entrances to these tunnels. Sadly, in people's homes, we found uniforms and clothes of abducted Israelis. We then sent the clothes to DNA testing, and we know who it belonged to. And these people went through these houses. So I'm not saying at all in any way that like all people in Gaza are a part of it, and therefore we're allowed to. But just saying is that when you're working against these organizations that are so cynical, they don't see themselves as responsible for the civilians in any way. It's really tough because Israel does see itself as responsible. The government sees itself as responsible to protect Israelis, and they're up against an organization that doesn't see itself responsible for its own civilians. And then the world is basically demanding Israel to be as responsible as it is for its own civilians, for the enemy's civilians. And I think that's just a very tough ask. And then you find these situations where you have to work in these areas. Now, like number-wise, look, I'm going to go ahead and believe the numbers that are coming out from Hamas. Okay, let's say it's 32,000 Palestinians dead. Obviously, they don't tell you how many of them are Hamas, how many of them are. I think Israel realizes that they're probably a third of them, or even closer to 50%, are like Hamas people. I mean, those numbers are not bad. Like, honestly, like I'm telling you seriously, again, I'm a little bit of a leftist. Like, it pains me that there are civilians and there are children and people who are not involved who are getting killed. But those numbers are not unprecedented. They're part of any urban warfare. They're similar to numbers when the US went into Iraq and Afghanistan. So there's basically just a lot of hypocrisy around Israel. Like there's a weird obsession. I don't know if it's because it's the Jews. I don't know if it's because like the world right now has got this like weird affection towards these like organizations, these terrorist organizations. I don't know what it is, but like sometimes the answers are pretty simple. Like the ratio is not unprecedented at all, and it makes sense because when I know about the rules that when I had to engage in fire, the rules I had to follow, makes sense that Israel's actually keeping to pretty high standard. And if Israel were bombing civilians, left and right, then if you looked at the map of Gaza, how dense it is, 2 million civilians, we would have killed way more than 30,000 people within 120 days. So that's, again, my long answer.
No, thank you for that.
I mean, hearing it firsthand is just, I don't know, it just, it's just remarkable to hear.
Yeah, I think I think that's like one of the things at school that I find very remarkable is that I don't know if why it knows, but like some people just don't talk to me at school anymore. And like if any of them were like knew what I was up to, I think they would be like thanking me and respecting me. Like it's funny how different the perception is of what it means to be a soldier in the IDF and what it means, what you were up to and what work you're doing. And like the perception of it and what it actually is. Like it's mind-boggling for me to have to deal with like that vast difference.
No, and yeah, I mean,
You say you mean people at school don't talk to you because you're Israeli?
Yeah. I've like little friends who like don't not even that they gave me the cold shoulder. Like they would walk by me as if I don't exist now because I rejoined my unit and like and I don't think their values are any better than my values. And you have to understand like what extreme brainwashing they like how much do they have to demonize Israel and me to not talk to me?
Yeah, why didn't I have talked about this, right? And you know, it's just
these are luxury beliefs, right? I mean,
they
that's
are. Yeah,
those are people that frankly have been so coddled and have such a luxurious, nice life that they have the luxury, right, to believe those things. So I forget those people. Frankly, right?
It's just like
a little jealous of them.
You know, I mean, you've seen it all across universities. You know, Ivy League. It's just this insane, belief that Israelis are colonizers, or it taps into like many different undercurrents of like crazy ideas or like super far left ideas in American politics, which are animated for several different reasons. But I mean, they're all wrong.
Yeah,
but it's terrible.
It's a
when I went to Israel when I was in my MBA, and the Israeli students that led it, one had been a special forces Israeli officer, and I don't think the other two had been in the military. What, doesn't everybody have to serve in the military? I'm not sure if they'd served in the military. I think they had.
Probably did, yeah.
But it's super interesting to like, get their perspective on it and see the country. And I think until you really like understand, it's like, okay, like the value, right, that the Israel brings to like that part of the world,
Yeah.
And like why we have such a strong partnership with it. It's hard. I can see why the Israeli government is so, the birthright trips, right? And they want people to come. They want people to see it.
Yeah. I think there's not many things in this world that like the perception of it is so different than the reality. Look, that's not to say that there's not some like crazy stuff in Israel, and there's not like people who are like there's small fractions and extremists who believe all sorts of crazy things. But in general, it's like it's very similar values. Yeah, I mean, same in the US.
We have crazy people in the US.
Yeah, exactly.
There are people in the US who like I almost am like you belong in a mental institution because some of the stuff, right?
We see them in the comments every day.
Right? Oh yeah, like I was just saying, right? And it's like if somebody's not calling me like a far left liberal, somebody's calling me like a crazy right person, or like you have just like people who are bananas and they just don't.
Yeah.
Plus, I think Gedalia, like you said, you'd be the first to criticize the current regime in Israel, and is Israel been perfect in its prosecution of the war? I would bet that you would say absolutely not. That's impossible, right? But I mean, my friend was over there. He was an air defense officer in the U.S. Army, and he would recount to me the amount of the level of difficulty for the Israelis for an airstrike compared to the level of difficulty for the U.S. or for NATO allies for an airstrike. And he said it was 7 to 8 times harder you had to have evidence. You had to know that the Hamas militants were there. They had to have been active within a certain time. You had to have told people there to leave. The idea, I mean, he said, that he's at HBS now, and he's like, I have classmates that say, oh, the IDF just shells, right? They just put a mortar and just send it into Gaza. And he's like, these people, like I said, it's luxury beliefs, right? I mean,
Yeah.
how, like you said, how you're jealous of them that they can live in a world where they can give you the cold shoulder.
Yeah.
But
I mean, best case, it's luxury relief. I mean, obviously, sometimes you feel like it really latches on to like really classic anti-Semitism. Like when you think to yourself, like it's you some in the way people describe like Israel's or like how the IDF acts, you know, like just genocide, as if like, you know, when I think about it, it's like you have to have this sort of underlying idea that like these people just want to like see blood and they want to, you know, like you go to a regular reserve unit, everyone just wants to go home and be with their kids. Like no one wants this war. Like Israel's a country that wants to innovate and wants to produce and wants to like no one wants this.
they were
No one
ready.
wants this shit. Like you think
Yeah.
we're like blood, like I don't know, like hungry. It's
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
ridiculous.
Palestinians work in the, they had at the, 20,000 Palestinians working in Israel a day or something like that through
Yeah,
Gaza, right? And they wanted more to come because,
yeah,
Israel's got its own like employment issues, right? And it's just,
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah,
like when I went there, like our tour guide was Israeli and the bus driver was Palestinian, right?
yeah.
You're just like, and he was telling us,
it's
like, yeah, we just make it work, right? He's like nobody's trying to like kill this dude or like strangle him,
I mean,
Uh,
Islamic Jihad is a fucking problem, and like
yeah,
Iran is a fucking destabilizing issue, and I mean, I don't, you know, it's tragic because there could be an alliance. There could have been like a strong look. Again, internally, Israel's government right now is not one that I would vote for, but they're unpopular as well right now within Israel. They wouldn't. If elections were tomorrow, it'd be very different. Um, but like when it comes to the military and stuff, it's like very pragmatic, very like hardworking. I would say very much aligned with like American values as well, uh but yeah, like there's a problem in the Middle East and like this de-escalation policy that the US have adopted, which also was adopted by Netanyahu, by the way, right? It was this idea that you can semi-negotiate and de-escalate political situations with terrorist organizations. It just doesn't work. So we'll see where this all leads to, but I think that Israel just has this responsibility right now to show that you can deal with Hamas, and I know that the world thinks you can't. It takes a lot of time. I have to say, like when I was in there in Gaza, I suddenly understood why it takes so long to deal with the infrastructure and to deal with an organization like Hamas. It really takes way longer than you would think. But I think that Israel's gonna succeed at the end, honestly.
yeah,
The military wise. The problem is the politics. Like, what is Netanyahu's vision like for the future on, in a diplomatic sense? But
yeah.
military wise, Israel can get the job done, in my opinion.
Yeah, if anyone listening wants to really melt their brain, go read about Israeli politics. I dove in
Yeah,
deep with one of my friends. It was wild. Yeah, it's like
yeah,
one of yeah, it's insane. It is not. It makes our politics look cut and dry, easy. So
yeah,
it's complex, and it really also made me realize like Israel's not some unified state that's, like you said, just lusting to like go and conquer their neighbors. It's incredibly complex.
yeah,
Seeing the stories you've told has really I mean, it was one of the most difficult things I've seen ever, seeing what you had to tell us about. So
yeah. Likewise,
thank you. Yeah,
likewise.
thank you for doing that, and really grateful you'd come on here and talk to us all about that. So I know everyone listening will be grateful. We'll have you on again to talk some more, but
Sure.
thank you, and best of luck to you and your friends.
Thank you,
really
and thanks.
appreciate the perspective, and thank you for coming on and sharing it. And we're happy to give a spot where you can do it.
All right. I mean, appreciate it. It's a good sanity check to have people that can speak the same language with.
Yeah, for sure. All right, thank you, Gedalia.
All right. Bye, guys.
All right, so thank you again to Gedalia. It was great. We're now going to jump into another national security related topic, with Venezuela boosting their military at Guyana's border. Kyle, what do you know about Guyana?
Not much, actually. This is kind of the first I'd heard about it. It's, a bunch of small countries you don't hear about. But yeah, I mean, I've been to South America a couple of times, and my takeaway from visiting that part of the world was, wow, interesting part of the world. But no, had not really been tracking this whole annexation.
Yeah. I mean, we all know Venezuela is like both a popular punchline in media, right? And like a thorn in America's side, along with Cuba, probably the two like real foreign policy conundrums that face America, I think. But Guyana, I did not know this. They are, by many accounts, the fastest growing economy in the world. They're a former British colony. They're the only South American country that has English as the official language, so not a Spanish-speaking country, but they sit next to Venezuela and Suriname, kind of on that North Atlantic coast or North Caribbean coast of South America. But they found a bunch of oil 2015, and they have since had an economy that's grown since 2015 at 50% per year. That was as of the last count. So 50% GDP growth per year. They had, when they found the oil, a country that was 40% impoverished. What happens when a country that's that poor starts growing that fast?
Yeah, I mean, unless they're able to, like, I don't know, defense is always such a thing to prioritize, right? But especially if you're in a bad neighborhood, like you're right next to
Your
Venezuela.
neighbor is the worst person in South America, right?
Like, yeah, like these are the guys who, if you watch Avatar, right, are like a lot of the people in the Avatar movie who are like soldiers, like fought the Venezuelans or something. So, James Cameron was trying to predict the future here. Maybe
Yeah, if you ever want to watch an interesting YouTube video, get onto YouTube and go watch the tourists that go to Venezuela. There's no Americans. You'd probably get arrested there by the government, but there's some Russian guys that will go to Venezuela and just kind of like go around. It's a pretty eerie place. Obviously, Venezuela's had a massive outflow of people. Their inflation rate has been somewhere north of 100% for like 10 years, right? It was once one of like the wealthiest countries in the Western Hemisphere. Very, very wealthy, lots of oil reserves. Hugo Chavez. Yeah, Hugo Chavez took over.
Yeah, that dude, I remember that guy. He was a real trip. He would just say the craziest shit.
Yeah, he just nationalized everything. I mean, he just came in and like took Exxon, took ConocoPhillips. Turns out it didn't work. And now Maduro is saying he's going to invade Guyana because they have this insane amount of oil. They're 800,000 people, so small country. They only have 3,000 people in their defense force because up until now, there was like nothing to invade. They now have 1 barrel of oil per person.
Oh, wow.
Per day. It's insane. Yeah, they have this immense amount of oil, 50% GDP growth.
Was it like unlocked through like fracking or something? Like
mostly offshore discovery. Exxon discovered it, or an Exxon-led kind of joint venture discovered the oil. Exxon has said that no matter what happens, they're going to continue to go ahead and push ahead. But basically, Maduro started to put troops at this border, and he's saying that Guyana, because of some treaty alliance, there's this area called Essequibo in the western part of Guyana that Venezuela says is theirs because there was an improperly executed land transmittal or something about 100 years ago. So this sounds very Putin-esque.
Yeah, right? like a real bullshit excuse to like take land.
Yeah. This sounds familiar, right?
Well, I mean, it's like rogue nations, like they always come up with some pretext for an invasion, right? As a way to justify it and sell it, and yeah, I mean, it's terrible. And like he's probably trying to distract from bad economy. It's like when Argentina invaded the Falklands, right?
Yeah, it's very similar. it gets complicated by the fact that Guyana has a military alliance with Brazil. Brazil is an enemy of Venezuela. I think most every country in South America is kind of annoyed with Venezuela. But also Southcom has now said that they're going to start doing exercises both over Guyana and around Guyana. And the question becomes, how serious is Maduro? And what are the consequences if America allows Maduro to annex half of a country, just basically take the resources? So it's complicated right now. If Maduro actually decides to invade and we have exercises, we're doing an alliance, what happens, right? It's kind of the election year surprise.
Yeah, interesting. Well, it's just another example of, the United people not being scared of the United States. It's a bad thing. Countries should be invading each other.
This is right in our backyard. So it could get very interesting. Maduro continues to say that Guyana is theirs, or Essequibo, this portion of Guyana is theirs. So the eastern half of, or the western half, excuse me, of Guyana belongs to Venezuela. Could heat up very soon and very quickly, and it will be yet another foreign policy thorn in Biden's side.
Yeah. Another invasion that signals world disorder and would not be good for the Biden administration.
No. So anyway, keep an eye on Guyana. That's what's happening there. But it could turn spicy. Moving next is this wild special counsel release that we just saw.
That was not a good week for Mr. Biden.
So basically, the way that this special counsel, the reason that it convened is because classified documents were found at President Biden's Delaware home, similar to Mar-a-Lago. And apparently there was quite a few that were top secret, eyes only. It wasn't, like just a few secret items. It was real stuff. And Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, wanted to make sure it was above board. So he appointed a special prosecutor by the name of Will Hur to go and investigate. And he investigated and he declined to prosecute. But the reason that he declined to prosecute was the bad piece. And this was pretty bad.
Yeah.
For Biden's electoral.
It was, basically saying that Biden is an elderly, forgetful old man, right? Saying like which is like the common theme that you hear from detractors and even some people in the Democratic Party now. They're basically saying like, this guy is too old. He's too old, right? And it isn't, and Democrats will get super pissed about it, and they'll be like, like Trump's only like 3 years younger or something, and I don't like Trump at all, but like, I mean, there's definitely a difference between Trump and Biden.
It's a huge difference. You watch Trump's stand-up routines.
Oh yeah, I mean, he's a pretty funny, witty guy. I mean, I think he's a dickhead, but yeah, you could like.
He's not. You watch the press conference. The worst part of this was, the worst part was the report. But the report says, like you said, he's an elderly, forgetful man, and that he couldn't recommend that he had that he couldn't recommend charges because a jury probably wouldn't be able to find intent, right? Which is the important thing. Because he's like forgetful. He said that he couldn't remember when he was vice president, said that he couldn't remember when his son died. And then he comes out for a press conference and confused Mexico with Egypt.
Well,
right?
it was a very angry, confrontational press conference, right?
He was upset.
He'd given, and I guess the press corps at the White House was given like a 30 minutes notice to get out there, and Biden's all pissed, like arguing with him and stuff. And like then, messes up the name of the Mexican president, gets all forgetful about what he's talking about. And it's just like, listening to the spin the past week is like they've tried out all these surrogates for Biden saying like, yeah, he's fine, and it's just
There was a I was on a plane this weekend and I was watching in the seat in front of me. I was on JetBlue and they were watching MSNBC live.
mhm.
And I haven't watched cable news in a while. It all kind of it's all very similar, right? But this person was watching MSNBC, and underneath it, it said it was a Joy Reid lady. It said Biden's age is a superpower, not a weakness. It's like,
Joy Reid is like the Baghdad Bob of left.
yeah.
Like
I mean,
there's so many things that like annoy me about right wing media and just like how like triggered and they'll gin anything up into a huge issue like or just lie about it. But like Joy Reid is basically like the same thing. The only thing I'll watch on MSNBC is Morning Joe because that's the only grounded show that entire network has. Everything else left wing trash.
It was amazing. I mean, I watched and I thought this isn't like a topic too that you can't figure out how to spin someone's age, right? The laws of nature are going to make this worse and more noticeable as a campaign happens. We all know that President Biden had a basement strategy on purpose, right, during 2020, which was brilliant. That was probably the only way he wins, was just let Trump say whatever he wants and sit back. And Trump's polls get better the less people see it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And that was like visibly reminded when he said he would encourage Russia to attack NATO countries.
Right.
It's like, oh my God, we're about to get fucking like 8 months of this. It's going to be
no one. The thing is like, unless you're like really deep into this, like you and I, like that was overshadowed by the fact that the special prosecutor literally said President Biden's unable to stand trial because he's a forgetful old man, right?
You know what I actually think that was bad. I thought was also it was just super shitty was he also didn't do the Super Bowl interview.
No. Well, he did a spot before the game. Did you see that?
No, I didn't, but I mean
I'll put it in the show notes.
Okay.
He complained about shrinkflation and he called on companies.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Yeah, it was I mean, for anyone that doesn't understand, like things are small because it's a form of inflation, right? Companies don't want to raise prices, so what do? They
give you less.
They clean your hotel room every other day, right? Or they reduce so
annoying.
Yeah, so it's annoying. The alternative is they raise your price, right? I mean, these companies, if companies can charge more, they will. If companies can increase margins, they will. It's not sneaky, right? Inflation is not suddenly some corporate greed. But he came out and he said shrinkflation. I mean, that was his issue, that he was going to call on companies to stop shrinking things.
Yeah.
Which is, it's like the old man yells at cloud from The Simpsons.
Yeah, when I hear the thing about the age, right? It's like you're the youngest you're ever going to be today. Age is a one-way, process, and everybody ages at different rates. When I hear people get all upset about it, like when you talk about it, it's like you can always tell who's like has like a narrative that they want to like, or like an agenda that they want you to like push or buy into, and it's always people who like who are usually really 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 want to have Biden or a Democrat president will like talk about this and get all defensive about it, and it's just like, can't we just be like intellectually consistent? I mean, like,
yeah,
just like look, if you guys still have time to nominate another candidate.
So I actually don't know if I was talking to someone that's pretty in the weeds. They used to work on the Hill. They're pretty in the weeds, and they were behind. I mean, off the record, they were like, "This is really bad. People are very worried. Ignore the whole hype about this being a superpower. People are freaking out. This was like a seismic event when the special counsel released." But he said that they don't think they do. He said it's time. It's too far past. There's some technicalities with voting, primary ballot. It's like would be. I guess you could always do it. He said you could always do it at the convention, right? Like they used to do.
Well,
Like,
that's the thing. Like you could do it at the convention. There's still time to basically like it would be a super unorthodox and like not normal like primary, but like because parties that's where they used to nominate.
that's what they used to do, right?
Yeah,
I mean, this was the smoke-filled rooms, right?
And I'm like, okay, like you got Gavin Newsom, you've got what's his
Gretchen Whitmer, Andy Bashir from Kentucky. You've got Cooper from
Illinois. Like just you. It sure is
so
fucking.
His contention was they can't do that. And if people know that it's possible, like feel free to send a message and we'll put it up. But that would be so undemocratic, right? That if you're already pissing off these people on the far left, that basically imposing a candidate would really alienate so many Democrats that you would end up with President Trump and it wouldn't be close. So things are looking like the strategy will definitely be let Trump trip over himself.
Oh yeah, yeah. They want to rerun the basement strategy. They're not Trump and Biden are not going to debate. Like they're just like Biden's going to basically just like look. He's just going to say, look how crazy this guy is, and Trump's going to go around and promise to destroy all his enemies and break up NATO.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Super ugly.
We'll see how well the basement strategy becomes a lot harder to execute. Obviously, are you familiar with what happened with President Wilson?
No, I actually am not.
So, Woodrow Wilson, right, president, like 1915 to or like 1914 to 1920, during World War I, right, shortly after, he had a stroke the last year of his presidency, or a year before he exited, had a stroke. And it came out several years later, if not decades later, that he couldn't even speak for the past year of his last year of his presidency. This was obviously before social media. This was before TV, right? His wife, Edith Wilson, is largely regarded for the last year of his presidency to have been the president, the de facto president. So that was one of the reasons we have the 25th Amendment, which people have asked, like, can they impeach Biden? You can't impeach for being, like, Biden could literally be like in a coma. You couldn't impeach. The Congress can't do anything. It's actually kind of a weird feature of the Constitution. So they made the 25th Amendment.
I was listening to Sirius XM today, and they were interviewing some dude, and he was basically talking about the 25th Amendment was a result of Wilson.
Yeah, his wife, it's wild. His wife was literally considered to be the president of the U.S. and he couldn't speak. I mean, nowadays you'd figure that out in like 3 days with Instagram.
You figure it out in like a day.
Yeah.
Something would leak, and
so it was also John F. Kennedy was always on painkillers because he had a terrible back issue, which if our audience is vets, we all know about back pain. But he apparently was always on intense painkillers, and it changed his state of mind pretty often, to the point that people were frequently worried about what would happen if something actually happened between the U.S. and Russia. And they thought, if the president is incapacitated because of being on painkillers, what do? We also have the fact that previous presidents, from Wilson to the guy that I can't remember his name, but he like got shot at his inauguration, and he like was like infected for 60 days and then died. They're like, what do we do?
Like McKinley or something?
It was like one of those forgotten presidents between Grant and like Roosevelt that we don't ever study. But yeah, he like was president for like 60 days and he just had an infection and died. Because they didn't believe in germs back then. But basically the 25th Amendment is the vice president has to trigger. It's a really complicated amendment. The vice president basically goes to the whole cabinet and says, like, this guy can't, Woodrow Wilson can't speak. He's obviously can't be president. And then a majority of the cabinet has to recommend to the president pro tempore of the Senate, who's not Chuck Schumer. I think the president pro tempore it's like the longest serving majority senator. I don't know who that would be, but whoever that is, they recommend to them. And then for like 20 days or like 2 months or something, there's an acting president, which would be Kamala Harris. And then after that period, the president can repetition and say, I am now good. And then the cabinet has to vote again to basically kick him out. So it's this super complicated process. Congress can't trigger it. Voters can't trigger it. It's just the cabinet, and trying to get the cabinet to all conform and be like, hey, yeah, let's kick the president out. That's not, but they're definitely going to have to address this. It's going to be bad.
Yeah.
So
I just, I didn't realize that we were, that there were externalities around, like, hey, they couldn't actually do to the convention. So
they can. It's just, it's just like, think about the left progressives. If they were told, like, hey, by the way, you guys are getting this, like, governor of Kentucky, right? The like moderate
I just like feel, that when it comes down to a binary choice, people will not abstain because they've had the Hillary Clinton experience, right?
Yeah.
Got them Trump, right? And I feel like, there's just
Well,
way. Like, far left people hate Trump.
They hate Trump, right? I mean, that's what Biden's voting. That's what Biden's banking on, is that they hate Trump more than they're worried about the fact that, like, I mean, honestly, as a service member, like, if I had a family member that was serving, like, it'd be very worrisome if someone attacked and our president, who will be 86 when he finishes second term, there was a war. I mean, our commander in chief controls the strategy. He gives the directive, right? And if you don't have the commander in chief, it'd be very, very, very chaotic, very fast. That's pretty scary. Like, I mean, having someone that it's a legitimate issue, but I mean, welcome to the next 8 months, right? It'll only get crazier from here.
Oh yeah, this is so shitty. It's all just so bad. Yeah, it was super damning. It's been interesting seeing, them try to spin it and everything. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, we'll have plenty more of this over the next 8 months, unless we just tune it out. So, next topic goes to San Francisco, where the fight is not between Republicans and Democrats, but between Democrats and Democrats. And it's titled "Tech Tries to Fix San Francisco." It was in the Saturday edition of the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And talking about how some tech giants and their founders are trying to make changes across San Francisco.
I've actually been wondering when this would happen for like several years now, because you have all these people who live in San Francisco and are wealthy and like the area and stuff, and the city has had the city's always had a bunch of issues, but lately it's, the issues have gotten a lot worse too. And it's like, at some point, like, how far can you push people until they basically push back and demonize them, right? Like, just demonize wealthy people. And San Francisco's got a lot, like, the inequality there, right? It's obviously like,
oh, it's off the charts. I mean,
it's crazy, but there's also like underlying systematic issues other than just, hey, the rich people are ruining it, right? It's the lack of housing, regulations, crazy,
well,
government.
It's gotten a lot worse recently because, I mean, I think you saw the pushback when Chesapeake, right? Chesapeake, he was the district attorney, for those that aren't familiar, in San Francisco. So he was the guy that, if you're a police officer, you arrest someone, you bring them in, the district attorney can decide to just not prosecute, right? And Chesapeake ran, and basically everyone said, this guy doesn't mean what he says. He just says things because it's in his campaign. And he had a campaign spot where his parents were terrorists that blew up an academic research facility in the 70s or 80s, the Weather Underground.
Oh yeah.
And they killed someone, right? So they were in prison for basically like his entire life because they murdered people. And he said that was a formative experience, and he doesn't think anyone's parents or anyone should ever have to visit their parents in jail. And people were like, oh, he doesn't actually mean that, right? I mean, he's just saying it because he's trying to get votes. And he got into office, and he basically just refused to prosecute most things. And he was pretty soundly defeated in a recall election, and he claimed that the conservative billionaires were out to get him, and that they executed this plot. Which, if it's that easy for conservative billionaires to figure out how to defeat someone, I don't know how they don't just win every election. So
Yeah, this guy I think was an extreme example. Looking at his all the schools he attended, right? I'm like, Jesus Christ, why do we like just these schools? These schools just pump out crazy people, both on the left and the right now. But yeah, I mean, like he went to like Yale Law School, like, of course. But yeah, but anyway, I mean, yeah. So like you have all these tech, all these rich people, all these tech execs. Like I think the guy quoted in the article, Gary Tan, who's like super big. Like was he Y Combinator founder?
he was the he's founder of Y Combinator. Kind of, he's in the the tech hive mind, right? He's kind of he's ever present.
Yeah, and he basically even like organizing like, hey, like we need to take the city back. The city's gone too far, right? There's like too much crazy stuff, local government. And like I'm just not surprised it's happening, right? Like in like full
a big piece of this was the school stuff too. I mean, the school board issues.
Yeah, we're gonna get rid of algebra.
Yeah, they got rid of algebra in middle school, and he's like, hey, maybe teach math. Did you see what he said on his post on Twitter?
No, I did not.
He said, the progressive members of the board are a mother effing crew. Die slow, motherfuckers.
He added, rattling out each of their names, and then he said it. He deleted the tweet and said he was referencing a rap song. It's people get frustrated, right? And San Francisco has always been kind of a basket case for many years, decades even, right? And it's just interesting to finally see there's like so much money in it now, and a lot of the city's problems could be fixed if they did have less crazy government. Like you think about like New York, right? New York was a basket case for years.
It was Gotham. Yeah.
Yeah. It was literally like where the whole fucking Batman thing comes from, was like New York, right? It's like,
yeah.
There used to be gosh, I remember like one time I saw this thing, and it was like on one part of Manhattan there was just like this area where people would just like dump cars into the river and everything. And like my buddy, one of my West Point classmates, his dad, who's worked in the city for like 40 or 50 years, right? He like working as like a young attorney there, was just saying you would, when the city was like super bad, you'd literally hear like there'd be like buildings, like burnt out buildings, and like just homeless, crazy people everywhere, and like just like
the violence was like 10 times higher than it is now.
Yeah, and you think about it, it's like, okay, at what point, San Francisco obviously isn't like that, right? But it has like problems that are just equally as bad when it comes. Like when I went there, like a few months ago, I was like, yeah, beautiful city, multicultural, a lot of good food.
Oh yeah,
but it's just like you see, just homeless people everywhere. Stores have like all these crazy, like everything's locked up. Like the big thing is they wouldn't prosecute for like theft under like $1,000.
Yeah, it was like under $1,000, public nuisance stuff. I mean, Jesse Boudin was just very lenient. Even stuff over that, he just was very lenient, right? And then you had these school boards that during COVID, when people were trying to figure out how to modify learning, how to get kids back in school, they like tried to rename an Abraham Lincoln named school.
Oh yeah.
It was crazy. Just stuff that was
said it was racist, and you're like this is literally like the not.
And what's the point? I mean, kids were trying to figure out how to get back to school. We were trying to modify curriculum, and they were renaming Abraham Lincoln Elementary.
This is actually one reason I left Chicago when COVID started, because I was like, the teachers union is going to take it too far, and they did, and they kept kids like out of school forever, like super long, and they even tried to shut down like private like Catholic schools. They're basically, oh, you can't open, like they basically like held them hostage. And I tell my wife this, she just won't believe it, but yeah, I mean, like when you start messing with the schools and like parents start to like really get annoyed, I think that's where when you see pushback like this is one of the parts of it where it where
So
it comes.
here's a crazy, just kind of going back. I looked this up. New York violent crime rate per 100,000 people. Okay. Today, or in 2019, that's how far these go. In 2019, it was 358 per 100,000, right?
Yeah.
In 1981, it was 1,069. So it was 3 times as high in 1989 as it is today.
Wow.
It was really bad. But San Francisco, I don't want people listening to be like, oh, these, Wyatt lives in Philly, which there was literally a shooting outside of my apartment, and we live in the nicest area of Philadelphia, as in Rittenhouse Square. There's literally a shooting outside of my apartment on Friday. You live in Austin. I don't want people to be like, oh, they don't go to, these guys, they're just, dumping on San Francisco. It's a nice place. I mean, you can still go there and and see a lot of beauty. But they're currently trying, these tech giants, what they're trying to do is fix San Francisco through some very pointed ballot measures and very pointed specific policy recommendations for the community. So trying to get money behind getting people to vote on very local issues. Some of them are modernizing the police force, allowing the police force to expand without proportionally raising taxes. So previously the Board of Supervisors, which is like the city council, they had limited the size of the police force, basically saying that unless you hike up taxes, we're going to keep the police force so low that it's ineffective. So they're basically saying we need to be able to expand the police force, and then returning algebra to schools, middle schools. I mean, like it's like idiocracy when you have to vote on returning algebra to middle school.
I mean, when it's just like everything, just like partisan agendas are just so extreme now, right? Like you can't, it's like the French Revolution, right? Like it just becomes more and more extreme and it eats itself, and like there's no like common sense.
Yeah. So I mean, the funny thing is these Board of Supervisors, London Breed is the mayor's name, and mayor's very much a Democrat, a pretty far left liberal. And the Board of Supervisors says that the mayor's too far to the right, and claiming again that conservatives are behind all this. When, I mean, if anyone has never been to San Francisco, I'm not sure how many conservatives even exist in total. This is like a liberal, these are like not far left liberals fighting against far left liberal. And it's mind boggling that it's like these leftists, like you said, it's the French Revolution. Anything that's to the left of them is too left. Or is not left enough, right? Also remote work. Is Google, what's remote work like? I mean, you go to the office how often? What's the state of things?
It's 3 days a week.
And is that up?
What do you mean?
Like a year ago? Like is that an increase from like a year or two ago?
Yeah. It used to be, it was like they were like encouraging people, and now they're just like, hey, you should be in 3 days a week.
So it's kind of a chicken egg thing, I think, because there's a lot of people that left the city, and because they left the city, tax based downgraded.
Yeah, like you have all these, like tech has tech has a lot of tech workers have migrated out of San Francisco, and they're kind of like Austin, a bunch of these other spots, right? But there's still a lot of tech in San Francisco. Like but there are like, but when you walk downtown, you do see a lot of empty buildings, right? And it's like, okay, like that is a threat to a lot of things, right? Property values, property taxes, people don't want to move somewhere where it doesn't feel safe or vibrant, So I mean, I don't know. The city's going through like a tough time right now, and maybe
so it's a shrinking real estate market right now. So according to Redfin, like real estate, company that helps with valuations and stuff. December 2023, San Francisco home prices were down 6.7% compared to December 2022.
Yeah.
Median price, mind you, is still 1.2 million. Which is insane.
Yeah, I mean it's still not a cheap market. at all.
No.
Just show you that it has like, there's been enough people who are like, I'm not doing this anymore, and they've left.
Yeah. So I mean, down 6.7% though. That's huge year over year to have a 6.7% shrinkage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a kind of a chicken and egg. I think a lot of these companies they realize that unless they get people that back into the city that care, that want to improve things, that it's going to be very difficult to fix things. We'll see what happens. I think a lot of people listening probably either work in San Francisco or here at Wharton, basically it's New York or San Francisco is probably 75 or 80% of my classmates.
Oh yeah, I had so many people go to San Francisco, California is beautiful, right? A lot of opportunity there. So many tech companies with headquarters.
Yeah, it is. I mean, my friend that's at Y Combinator right now, he posted a video of him like running on this like beautiful boardwalk at 9 p.m. or 10 p.m. It looked nice. I mean, it's not like a dystopian city. It's down from where it was. People are leaving. Markets don't lie. The fact that real estate's down 6.7% indicates that people would rather leave than come and stay.
Yeah, I as someone who lived in Chicago for a few years, right? You'd often hear me like, "How can you live there? It's a shithole," and it's like, it was fine, right? And I'm sure if like I lived in San Francisco, like 98% of my time would be okay, and I'd probably have pretty crazy encounters the other 2% of the time. So it's just
I live in Philly with the other insane DA who they tried to recall and he lost by like 1%. And it's like, I mean, we were talking to our friend Sarah who had gone here pre-COVID, and she just COVID hit and Krasner came in and things are a lot different now. So Philly same way. I mean, my wife always says like we love Wharton, like we've had a great time here, but man, like we're not looking to stay in downtown Philly.
I've never thought to myself Philadelphia. That's where it's at.
Eagles fans say that.
Yeah.
I'm not an Eagles hater, but I'm not necessarily an Eagles fan. I'm like Eagles neutral. So any Eagles fan is listening is probably just I'm Eagles agnostic. Yeah. So anyway, we're gonna watch with bated breath what happens. Maybe these kids can get algebra back into school.
I mean, I think it'd be interesting, right? Like, it'd be interesting to see if they could actually like, get like Giuliani in there that would, clean the city up. But like I said, San Francisco's been like
there's Kyle. Kyle has just gone on record asking for Giuliani.
No, I said a Giuliani-like figure, pre insanity.
I know. I'm just giving you a hard time because I think that's the first time in a long time that you've spoken at all positively about Giuliani. Although it is true, he was a different man. So that's the wrap for our current event items this week. Kyle, you correctly picked the Chiefs. I picked the Chiefs. You didn't win your bets though.
Shitty prop bets normally, don't pan out.
And what's the plan for the rest of the week? Any exciting stuff?
No, work. It's got work. It's my life, work and kids.
You've gone in the past up to Tepper to do MBA recruiting. What's the vibe in Austin generally at Google and places kind of towards MBA hiring?
I mean, they're still doing it. But I think it's I think it's like just the tech scene has slowed down in general. I know you sent me that like Wharton MBA employment report or like state of like the economy or something, and I was reading it.
Yeah, state of the job market.
And I was like, yeah, this seems pretty in line. I mean, it's still occurring, right? It's just I think tech does just in time hiring for like MBAs, and so I don't know, but like to be honest, like I don't. At the level like that I work at, I don't really work that much with like new.
Yeah, do you ever have MBAs that come and work for you?
No, like I don't really work. Like most of the people I work with are all experienced folks.
Okay. Yeah. Well, best of luck to anyone out there trying to get a job at Google. Kyle will tell you it's a long process for anyone that wants to work in tech. It's not a one interview and you're done. So to those,
if it is, you should be concerned.
yeah, yeah. So to anyone going through the battle, yeah, same thing for like Amazon. I mean, these companies will make sure that you are the right fit, and yeah, small startups. It might actually be one interview or no interviews. I've seen classmates get the jobs that way, but Google, Amazon, Apple, I mean, they can be extremely selective. So
they have long interview loops, right? And they're usually pretty competitive. So
yeah,
but hey,
yeah,
I work here, so it's not impossible.
Yeah, people do get jobs. Yeah, Wharton. Wharton, unlike HBS, had 97% of people 3 months after graduation.
I think that's just because HBS people are just feel like they can be super picky.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. HBS was 86%, Stanford was 89%, MIT 90%, Kellogg 94%, Booth 96%, Wharton 97%. Columbia did not report, so who knows what that means? Could be good, could be bad. But yeah, just-in-time hiring. So for anyone that is listening that doesn't have an MBA, basically means you are being hired by a company that wants you to work then. Most companies don't have the ability to forecast hiring 6 months in advance, or like consulting and banks 2 years in advance. So they will hire you and ask you to come to work 2 weeks later. The downside of that for MBA students is you're left looking for a job probably until May or June. Because
I mean, I knew people who were recruiting still like up until graduation, and I was like, oh, that sucks. But then I had to go work in consulting. That sucks. So maybe they had better work-life balance than I did.
Yeah. Someone said that the happiest classmates were the people that got their jobs in May. So that was a grad that came.
Could definitely probably talk about that more, right? There's nothing wrong with being picky especially when you have the ability to be picky.
So yeah, when you're a vet that's not in debt when you leave, a lot of people have to worry about how they're going to fund their $1,000 a month student loan debt. Oh, yeah. That's for the most part.
Or a visa, like an H-1B visa.
Yeah, you have 3 months after you graduate from school generally. So that's a worry. Yeah. So be grateful, vets. You have an incredibly fortunate position to be in.
I know it's shocking sometimes. People just are like, "What am I going to do if I got a family?" And I'm like, dude. Like, it's okay.
I hang out with a lot of people here. I'm married. I hang out with a lot of people that are married and have kids. There's families here that have 3 kids and they're not vets. And one of them's about to do a search fund. So, if you tell me, yeah. So good luck to Jimmy. If he's listening.
Your wife is being extraordinarily patient with you.
Oh, she's a saint. So, yeah, I'm sure Jimmy will crush it. So if anyone has one good business
to buy, let
Jimmy Gillespie know. And anyway, Kyle, anything else before we sign off?
No. Well, a couple. Everybody's still listening at this point. we're doing more stuff on YouTube. More content's coming out. Wide's doing a great job on the website. There's more Sitrep stuff coming. So be on the lookout for that. Should probably say all that stuff at the beginning of the podcast.
We'll hit that next week. To all the loyal listeners, go check out, go subscribe to YouTube. So anyway, talk to you next week, Kyle.
Yep, sounds good. Have a good one.
And I'm not talking about some $400,000 a year working Wall Street stiff, flying first class and being comfortable. I'm talking about liquid. Rich enough to have your own jet. Rich enough not to waste time.